Get ready for the Very Visible Business Podcast with David Avrin. Each week featuring a candid and raucous conversation with some of the most innovative, outspoken, and entrepreneurial business minds in the world today. This is the Very Visible Business Podcast. And here's David Avrin.
And welcome to the Very Visible Business Podcast. I am David Avrin. And today we're going to talk about communication. And I know it sounds like a very broad subject, but we're going to go from the macro to the micro. And one of the best resources to talk about this is Debra Fine, the author of The Fine Art of Small Talk. And you know what's interesting in not just organizations, but interpersonally as well, of how much has changed and how we communicate and the importance of communication. And many of us will lament, oh, the kids can't talk and all they're doing is tweeting or texting, or these are the people who are going to be in business next year and the year after. So how we communicate with them is crucial, and doing it effectively is crucial. And as I said, no better person to talk to than Debra Fine. So Debra, before we say welcome, quick introduction. Interesting background. She researched and studied strategies for starting conversations, keeping them going, remembering names and actively listening, exiting with grace in conversations, and generally making a positive impression on those with whom she has struck up conversations. And the result was the bestseller for years and years and years. There's very few that can not only achieve bestseller status, but have such a staying power. And there's very few in our industry, in our profession, in business, who have been able to achieve that. And Debra has, with her book, The Fine Art of Small Talk, which is a book handy for anyone from business executives to PTA parents and students facing post-college interviews, or singles trying to make love connections. But for our purposes, it is for effective communication in the workplace with clients, with prospects, and others. So there's a long introduction. Debra Fine, welcome to the show.
Thanks, David. It is an honor, and I feel like not only have we been colleagues for 20 plus years. You started, I think you were about 12 then, but I was a little...
Yeah, I must have been. And I had a beard at the time.
Yes. Well, we have a lot of other talents. I hope your audience knows what kind of singer you are. And you're a legend here in the town that we both happen to live in and fly from, which is Denver. And so people like me are lucky enough to know about that part of you too. And
thank you for saying that.
And your beautiful children and how well they've done. But I do want your audience to know also, because the topic almost sounds fluff, small talk. What a waste of saliva. I mean, why is David having someone like that? Okay, maybe they're friends. Is that why he's hosting her on his podcast?
No.
But, well, I'm just saying,
right, but
a listener or viewer. But you know what? There's a part of me that you didn't mention that's important, I think, for the audience to know, is that I used to be an engineer. So that's what my degrees are in, and that was my profession. And that's where this idea came from, is that, first of all, I hated small talk. I thought it was a waste of saliva. A lot of times we hate things that we don't do well. I mean, I didn't figure that out at that time, but jogging is a good example in my life of something that I hated because I didn't do well. And once I really did learn to pace myself, I mean, I don't love jogging. I don't want to give you the wrong impression, but I certainly can now and keep the weight down and all those other great things. So I looked at it in an analytical way, like people like yourself, who I think people would say about you, David, who met you, that you're charismatic, that you're born with the gift of gab. So I used to observe people like you when I did my research and think, what is he doing? And then I labeled it like an engineer. What is he saying? How is he starting conversations? How does he keep them going? How does he exit? What are these people doing? Besides the research from books, what are actual people doing? And so that's where I have come to see that small talk is really an appetizer for any relationship. And I will get to the answer to your question, by the way. But
no, you're fine. It's a conversation.
Small talk is not the negotiation, right? Or the provision of the service or the presentation or the negotiation, the job evaluation, but it is the appetizer in order to build that business friendship with people and or build a network. So the answer to your question about, John Nesbitt wrote a book, Megatrends, long before, right? Okay. So you're familiar with it. I think that was like the 80s maybe, I don't know. But nonetheless, he talked about how in a high-tech world, which we weren't then at that time, that we were not high-tech, although he might have viewed it that way. Now we're in a high-tech world where we communicate via technology. People long for high touch. And I think he nailed it back then in that's exactly what's happening. So it's not to negate technology. My guess, David, is you're like me. I let my client know just so that, I was in Columbus, Ohio yesterday. I landed and I texted it. I don't need to have a phone call. She doesn't need to be interrupted. Okay. And then my books weren't in the room, and, the text is very handy and email is great. You and I set up this whole thing via email. We don't have to talk on the phone or talk face to face. But I think people do appreciate face-to-face communication more than ever today. And by the way, you and I are both parents, and I wouldn't just knock the younger generation. I would knock our generation. How many restaurants do I go to, or meetings? When I see somebody's phone is on the table at the conference table, if you sit on a board with me, if you and I are about to do business and your phone is out. Now, in defense of men, and I'll just throw this out, men do not carry purses, at least most men I know. So if you're carrying it in your back pocket and you need to put it on the table, that I get, but put it down upside down. But otherwise, I think we've not only lost the art, but it's sort of a crutch now, this device. Like, we don't have to talk to people. Right. And it's so great to pick up the phone to a client and you cited leaders in the beginning. A leader can be super influential if he or she is willing to go face to face, not just for the job evaluation or the project conversation or anything like that, but to go up and talk to people about things that have nothing to do with the project in order to develop that rapport. And, I'm showing my history now, another book, I'm forgetting Management by Walking Around.
Sure.
Right. So that was really one of the inspirations for my business. As a matter of fact, to this day, Lockheed Martin uses me all over the country because they implemented Management by Walking Around. They had a problem, you may recall, where people thought, and your father was a rocket scientist, and I believe he worked for either Martin Marietta or
Lockheed. He worked for Martin Marietta and became Lockheed Martin.
Right. So great. So, and a tribute to your dad, because that's who built this country, by the way. Just
thank you for that.
You're welcome. So they had a little, you may remember this, David, a little problem with inches versus millimeters or something.
Right.
And it was terrible. And so the then CEO, Tom Marsh, had heard of me, and he said, here's the problem. We're supposed to be doing management by walking around, but nobody's walking around because they don't know what to say except, how's the project? Or, what's new? And then somebody would say nothing, and then they would be nowhere. So he decided leaders within Lockheed Martin need to implement communication leadership skills. And he believed it started with small talk. And that's what started my great work with Lockheed Martin. And so that's an example of how important it is to do face-to-face conversation so that we really hear each other and listen, et cetera.
So here's the deal. I mean, no, there are people who will lament technology, whatever. Luddites are going to, have their own, it's easy to dismiss those who are anti-technology. We're not talking about any of that. We're talking about if we redefine small talk as having the skill to initiate conversations, right?
Right.
Isn't that what
keep them going and make people feel comfortable?
Because a lot of people will dismiss as it's the cocktail party. We're not doing that anymore. This is about how do we, if we're going to establish, you can look on the interpersonal side, if we're going to establish positive relationships, it begins with that first step. And that first step is in being able to initiate in a comfortable way an authentic conversation.
That's exactly right.
People like people who like them, all of the above. So I think even the term itself, and you've dealt with this your whole career, of people misinterpreting or being dismissive, but I think we look at it as how do you initiate that conversation, whether it's management by walking around, whether it's meeting a new prospect. Everything starts with that initial conversation, doesn't it?
It does, and it keeps going. As a matter of fact, I feel, and look what social media does, by the way, technology. Today, just to be able to cite your father, I did not Google you before we got on. I feel like we have enough of a relationship, and I happen to have good retention about things that I care about, that I knew that off the top of my head. I had no plans to talk about Lockheed Martin. I didn't know what questions you were going to ask. I also remembered your 3 children. So that's such a helpful thing to grease the relationship, is to know things about people so that you can sort of keep going with cultivating the relationship and then getting down to the interview and having the business conversation. That's why it's important.
Right, but isn't also part of the great small talk or initiating conversations, having the strong listening skills. And once again, I'm not trying to be basic. One of the things that I remember, and you and I, we do have a history. We spoke together. We've been in Singapore.
Right. We have.
But I also know that your son went to Yale.
You remember that?
Of course I did, because we had that conversation.
My day. He's like 50 years old now.
Right. But that's the whole point, is it's not listening as a strategy. It's listening because you really care.
That's exactly right.
So take us through that for our listeners and our viewers as well. Once again, this isn't a workshop, but I want to talk in terms of a philosophy. People will talk about these minor things like, remember, like if you get somebody's business card, hold it and gesture with it. I think it's just crap. I mean, it may work, it may not. What's authentic is really having a conversation, being interested in the other person, remembering the things that you talked about. How do you impart that to your clients, to your audiences?
Well, obviously it has to be genuine, but then, what's critical, I think, are two pieces here. One is, how do I really get it started so I show I'm genuinely interested, and then obviously listen, as you said. And I think we have fallen into rhetorical conversation. How are you, David? Pretty good. How about you, Deborah? Oh, well, now where are we, David? We haven't moved an inch from that conversation, right? And so there's a couple strategies that I talk about in order to cultivate rapport with people. And a great leader does that. And it doesn't mean you have to be the director of R&D or product development right now. It means that that's where you strive to be a leader within your own ladder, whatever that may be for you. You could be in a library and take care of patrons. I mean, you need to be the leader. And number one is it's up to you to assume the burden of other people's comfort in conversation. And I think that—
Slow down. Say that again. Say it slower. You've said it 100 times. Help me understand what that means.
So to anybody that's listening who's either an introvert, which I happen to be an introvert who behaves like an extrovert for interviews and on stage,
sure,
and or who is shy, and I used to be shy, you can identify with this. The only person's comfort we're concerned with during face-to-face communication is our own. So I would be worried about what I was going to talk to you about. I would be worried if you think I'm awkward. I would be worried if I'm standing by myself at a cocktail reception and that everyone in the room knew I had no one to talk to. If I forgot your name in 20 years ago, what I would say is, hi, how are you? And I'd keep talking to you and I'd hope for sort of a religious experience.
Right, we all do that. Hey, buddy, what's up?
Now, right. But women don't really get to say that. But now I assume the burden. And by that, I mean, your comfort comes first. Hey, I know I've run into, I know we've worked together. I'm just your name. I'm having one of those brain freeze moments. Could you please remind me? That's assuming the burden of making sure you're comfortable with me. I used to sit at a table of 8, David, and hope that the David Avrins of the world would be at those tables, because then, he would keep the conversation going. He's vivacious. He's outgoing. Now it's up to me. I walk into any interaction with 2 to 3 things to talk about that have nothing to do with business. I mean, it's in my head. I'm prepared because I'm assuming the burden of making you feel comfortable at that table of 8, even if you're not my guest, even if you're not my—
I like that.
So a couple ways to sort of get over that initial breaking the ice, if you don't mind, that I happen to like is one that I really like is, if it's someone so you're in a role within an organization, corporation, whatever, and you either see them at a monthly meeting or an annual conference, or you're going to your weekly staff meeting, instead of saying, how's it going? Or how have you been, David? Or how's your summer? Or how are the kids? Or how's work? Or how's business?
Pretty standard.
What I like to say to people is, catch me up, David. What's new with business since the last time I saw you? Or, David, bring me up to date about the kids. So I'm not going to— and by the way, I would never say to you— now I've learned earlier in our conversation when your listeners and viewers weren't with us that it's not Sydney. Yeah, it's Sydney. Sydney is the one who went back to Northern Arizona, correct?
Right.
Right, okay. But I would never have said to you, hey, how's it going for Sydney? Is she going back to the University of Northern Arizona? Because I don't know. For some reason, maybe I don't follow you well enough or whatever. I did not know the answer to that question when we started today. So here's my point.
And most people wouldn't, right?
Well, they wouldn't know, but here's where you have to be careful. There's a lot of extroverted people who they have great memories and retention. And so they say things like, how's it going for Sydney at university? Well, what if Sydney is taking a break? What if Sydney dropped out? I had a child that dropped out of college. I mean, they used to say, how's Sarah's? Did she graduate? No, and thanks for asking me in front of all these people. Here's a better question. Catch me up on Sarah. So that's why I'm saying it's number one, it's a good question. You run into somebody and you've met them because they work for Wells Fargo. If they don't have a name tag on that says Wells Fargo and we're at a Rockies game, I'm not going to say to them, hey, how's it going at Wells Fargo? And show off that I remember where they work. I'm going to say, bring me up to date. What's new with work since the last time I saw you?
Here's what I like about that, Deborah, is it lets them choose what they want to share.
That's exactly right.
Because I think we've all been in those really awkward conversations. So tell me about so-and-so. Oh yeah, they died, last week, or some horrible, and now your conversation's taken, listen, even for somebody who's clearly extroverted like I am, what great skills, because I have been in, my wife laughs at some of the most horrifically awkward things that I brought up, because I just spout out. I'm extroverted, I have conversations, but that's a great skill of giving them the freedom and the choice for what they want to share and talk about. That is empowering. I like that.
And if I said to you, how's business? I mean, I think you'd say, everything's going great. Thanks for asking. But if I say, what's new with your business since the last time we spoke, I'm more likely to get a sentence out of you. So I like to launch conversations that bring me up to date, catch me up on what's new with the project or whatever, or the family. Like, because you don't know, maybe my husband left me, David, and we haven't discussed my husband yet, and he still is my husband coincidentally, but it's not cool when acquaintances say to me, is Steve here? Well, what if he left me, took the money, took the house? I'm like, I don't really want to talk about that at a party. Took the kids, they're in their 30s, they're hard to take.
And to clarify for our audience, Steve is still around and Steve is still awesome.
Yes, he is. But thank you. But so that's just a better way to start a conversation. And then the other thing I like to tell people to consider is this. So here's my goal in to build rapport with people and be an influencer and build networks. My goal is to get to know you better, but I don't want to be too personal because I don't want to go over certain boundaries. For instance, if I didn't know you, I would never say to you, are you married? And let's pretend I found out you were married to Laurel, and you go, oh, I'm a newlywed, I'm married. It's been the best thing. And I go, so do you have any kids? What kind of question is that? Like, what if you didn't have kids, David?
Right. What if we've been suffering with infertility for 20 years?
Right. Lots of people don't have kids. Like, it's not necessarily a go-to place, but I have a better way to start that kind of conversation if you'd like to hear it.
Yeah, go on.
Okay. What I ask people all the time, and I think women in your audience, this will resonate with them, because sometimes it is harder for a woman with a man that they don't know, for them to come across as sincere and genuine without... You can't assume a man follows the Broncos. I mean, that's presumptuous.
Right.
And just bring up sports. What if he's not into sports? So how do I foster that business friendship with you? And the best way I've learned to do it is to say to a man or a woman, what keeps you busy outside of your work?
Love it.
Once again, he has the choice. You'll either talk about your kids, maybe you'll talk about, I don't know, your travels for fun, your fun travels, or anything like that. You can talk, or what do you do for fun? So that's my way to get to really communicate with people in a face-to-face way that's authentic, where I can learn more about them. And that's a handy way.
Well, and here's what I like about it also is it is, as the book title says, there's an art to this. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that you're preoccupied with, okay, how am I going to start this conversation? It's just having those tools in your toolkit, those arrows in your quiver, that these are some great conversation starters. Now, for somebody that you do know, one of the questions that I get a lot, is, so where are you off to next?
Okay,
you've done a ton of, I see online, because I'm an overshare, and part of this is what I teach in visibility and marketing. But it is. I mean, feel like you share, because I teach this. This is all part of it. And if I was talking about visibility and I wasn't visible, then who the hell should listen?
Exactly.
But the people who say, listen, I follow your stuff, tell me some crazy place you're off to next. It's a wonderful conversation starter, because what it also says is, I know you, I follow you, or I feel connected to you, and I'm going to lead you with something. And you and I have that same conversation. You've been very sweet in that as well. And we have this crazy background because we're literally on the other side of the world much earlier in my career. And
your personal life, let me just throw that out.
Different, yeah, absolutely different in terms of relationships and everything else. But that's also part of catching up. So let's talk about it from a more strategic perspective. Okay, let's take it to another level. So we say, here's what we do, and here's how we do it. Here's my question for you. To what end? So this will help you, if you're able to do this well within your strategic relationships, potentially a new client, a new person you meet in a social setting, sort of within a work environment. Besides just being better at this, which just makes us more attractive as people and wanting to engage in developing better relationships. From a business perspective, what does this afford those who have developed these skills?
Well, number one, and I'll use your trademark word, is visibility. It raises our visibility. So if I'm the kind of person I used to be, the engineer I used to be, where the CEO flew in from San Francisco, And I waited for him to come over to me to say hello. And he didn't, not because he didn't like me. It's just he probably didn't even know me. I was 24 years old. Who cares?
Right.
And people were surrounding him because I didn't have the courage to just go over and say, hi, Debra Fine, don't know if you remember me, but I'm working on the blah, blah, blah project. And that's it. And not even engage him, just become visible. And I think a lot of people, David, just in their own little worlds of work, aren't visible because we're either shy or we're unwilling to take the risk to walk. We figure, well, if you're interested in us, you'll come up to us, but that's not what visibility is.
Works.
If you want to be a leader, you have to be visible. Another example, I won't give another example right now. So visibility would be key. And that's also even in a volunteer organization, but also within any corporation or organization, you want to be visible. So you can't be a rainmaker if you're an attorney unless you're visible, because you could be the best attorney out there, David, but if you're not sort of somebody that tries to stay connected with me or meets me, I'm going to pick a different attorney. My husband has a great example. My husband's a periodontist, and he will tell you, so he's a specialist in the mouth.
Right.
He says some of the best dentists have the smallest practices. He really believes this, and he's a dork. And some of the worst dentists, the worst work he sees in our mouths is from the biggest practices. And here's the reason. People go into a dentist and they, oh, Debra, how you doing? Oh, great to see you. So how are the kids? So we like that guy. We like that gal, but we don't know they're doing rotten work in our mouth. So the biggest practices are the likable dentists, not the best dentists, because you and I don't know if we're in a, Steve knows, but we don't know. So, it's a terrible thing to say, but it's the same in real estate, et cetera. But to answer your question again, so to raise my visibility would be one result that I would want. Another result is to be able to solve problems. So what I mean by that is recruit candidates, gain referrals, sell more product. There's so many results you get when you put yourself out there, and even networking. Here's a good example. One of my favorite quotes is, a desk is a dangerous place to view the world. John le Carré, the author.
Right.
And a desk now to me is also a device, by the way. So you go, I'm so busy, I can't go to that association event or the bankers, industry, estate planners, whatever. Really? You're too busy to go face to face? Or is it that you just don't like to do that? So that's another result of being really good in conversation and networking skills, is being willing to put yourself out there, meet new people, not hang out with your colleague. Just, what I say also is, for people like me who weren't good at it, is turn it into a task. People like you don't need to turn it into a task. You'll just work a room because it comes naturally to you. This is what I tell people who it doesn't come naturally to. And you're in the minority, by the way, David. You are. Right.
I do recognize that.
But
I'm the guy who likes to be at the mall at Christmas time. I'm like, I get my energy from crowds. I don't like lines, but I love lots of people. But I know everybody isn't. And my wife.
I'm curious, is your wife? She seems like an introvert to me.
Oh, she's very much an introvert.
Yeah, so you're a good pair.
She's a very socially comfortable introvert. You are the people who go back and need to recharge by being by yourself.
Right.
I recharge by going to, a stadium full of people. So.
Right. And, I'm a lot like Laura. I mean, she's like gorgeous, but I'm a lot like her in that person. I have the same personality, actually.
Yeah. But let me ask you, and I know you were talking about, let me stop for a second. But how do you, for those who aren't naturally inclined, doesn't mean that they're not nice people. They got great friendships.
Right.
But in unfamiliar social situations, how do they turn off that voice that says, oh, God, I want to say something. I want to say something stupid. And people are looking, I look really stupid. I love that line. I don't know who said it. Something along the lines of, people wouldn't care so much about what people thought of them if they realized how seldom people thought of them.
Exactly. I don't know who said that. But
People don't care. Like, they don't care what you look like. They care what
they don't even notice.
Care what they look like.
Right.
People would be stunned at how little people actually think of them. They wouldn't.
Absolutely. And most of your audience probably thinks about going to one of those gruesome events that they have to go to, and they're standing there. They think everybody knows. They have no one to talk to. But unless you're really hot, you have to be like celebrity hot. I'm talking hot. Nobody knows you're in the room. So get over it. And as I was saying earlier, the key to success for people that it doesn't come naturally to is, I turn it into a task. I tell myself I'll meet 3 new people tonight at this event, or 1 or 5, or, I get to pick the number. And it's the same thing as all the other tasks. You write books, David. I'm sure you turn it into a task. I have to write 30 words.
It's the only way to
deadline.
Yeah.
That's how it gets done, is you have a task. I mean, our laundry, you look pretty spiffy today as usual. I feel like I look pretty good. Well, it's because it's a task and it gets done. However it gets done, it gets done. So turn it into a task. So I tell myself, you'll meet 3 new people tonight. You can't hang with David Avrin. You see him over there. You'd like to, because, then it's easy.
It's easy because somebody you know.
Besides David Avrin. And then when I'm done meeting those 3 new people, guess what I get to do? I can go talk to you. I can start drinking. I like to drink. I can leave early.
You reward yourself for having completed the task.
Right. Okay. So the next thing is walk in prepared to anything. Even if you're my boss, David, and I work for an organization and I'm going to go in for a meeting with you. And maybe we're going to walk down a long, long hall together. We're going to sit at the meeting and wait for your vice president, whatever, to get there too. I need to be prepared with things to talk about besides the project at hand, because we're going to get to that and it's going to be redundant. So be prepared with things to talk about. Yesterday, I was booked in Columbus, Ohio. I know more about Ohio State. I mean, I'm trying to forget it right now because I'm back in Denver. Do you understand?
Right. Much
about Ohio State. I know that they picked the quarterback. I know that somebody named Ezekiel Elliott, I can't believe I'm still remembering this today, who played for Ohio State, I guess plays for the Cowboys, and Jerry Jones was upset with them. I mean, I could just go on. I also know about a lot of other things about the scooter situation, these e-scooters. It's a great conversation starter. Why? Because I walked into the lunch, and before I spoke, and I sat at a table of 8 with people I never met, and I had things to talk about. So always be prepared. Here's another tip, okay? This is a typical conversation. I say to you, so David, if you'll play along with me for a second.
Sure.
How we do. David, how have you been?
Good.
How are the kids? How are the kids?
Everybody's great. Everybody's great.
And oh, thank you. Mine are great. And how's work? How's business?
You know what? Busy.
Okay.
Travel.
I hope everybody heard this. This is an extrovert interacting with someone that he's known for a long time, because you know what David Avrin did? What we all do. Now, I'm not going to pin this on you, David, because I know it doesn't fit you, but I'll tell you, I'll pin it on me. I give 1-word answers: busy, good, how about you?
Right.
Because I'm lazy. I'm a lazy conversationalist unless I'm focused and investing in. Now, I put you on the spot there. So, okay, everybody.
Well, listen, and I'm part of us playing along for this, but because we know each other, we would have gone into much deeper stuff. But this is the conversation that most of us have with people that we are acquainted with.
A customer, David, a client.
Yeah.
They walk into your store. Let's say you own a store, right? You that's who you serve. People who take care of customers, clients, patients, right? Everything. Okay. So I walk into their store and they say, how's your summer going? I say, pretty good. How about yours? And that's the extent of building rapport with the customer.
Pitiful.
Time. Now, if you don't have time, I get it.
Right.
But how about, number one, when somebody says to me, and I have time, if you have the courtesy and kindness to say to me, how's your summer going? I'm going to give a sentence in response. I'll say, great. I went on a cycling trip to France this year. It was really fun. I stopped there. I'm not even sure you're really interested in my summer, because all you said was, how was your summer? People say, how are you? How's your summer? How's the project? And all they mean is, hello. So,
exactly. But haven't we been socialized to not, because the obnoxious answers like, so how you doing? Oh, you know what? I got this I hung, and I got, this, and oh God, it's been really crazy. Because the older we get, then everybody starts talking about their physical ailments. It's like, I was just trying to say hi. I didn't really mean, how are you? But how do we get over that? I mean, talk to me a strategy, because we have been socialized to give meaningless questions and brief responses.
Right. That's exactly right.
Right.
And so I say, when you have the time and the interest in connecting with somebody, help them out. So if somebody says to me, how you doing, Deborah? Or how have you been? It's a client on the telephone. It's someone that I'm at a board meeting with, whatever. If I have the time, I'll just give them a real answer in a sentence. Not, the storytelling thing is happening now all around us, David, and I'm not sure that I'm a fan, because I don't want to hear the whole story, okay? Right. Don't hold me hostage and tell me your story for 5 minutes. I didn't ask for the story. I'm saying give a sentence. So if you said to me, Deborah, how's business? I'd say, well, I was in Columbus, Ohio yesterday, and it went great. I don't need to tell you the client. Now, if you ask and show an interest, that's great. So I say to people.
So the recipient would give the clue as to whether or not we're going to extend the conversation.
But if I want, I may not even want to, but just give me a factoid in case I would like to, because if you've given me nothing, if I go, how are you? Or how are the kids? Say, I took Cindy to, her junior year, I think. Say that. Oh, or I took my daughter to, now I know you have a daughter, even if I don't ask you about it. You know what happens when I find out you have a daughter, David? You become 3-dimensional. Do you know people like to do business with people that are 3-dimensional? What if I don't have kids? What if we have nothing in common? What if I don't care about Sydney at all? But when you said, how's it going? Good. I took my daughter, who's a junior in college, back to school this week, so it's been pretty hectic. And you stop there. You don't talk about her GPA. You don't mention what she's studying. You don't tell her how beautiful she is.
Right. You don't get boastful.
Right. You just give a sentence. Now what you've done is you've planted a seed. Oh, there's more to David Avrin than professional speaker, best-selling author. He's a human being. Human beings have kids that they take to college. It's the same thing if somebody said, how's it going? They said, well, great. I got in a round of golf over the weekend. So that's always, good for me. Now I know they golf. I don't golf, but at least I know they're a human being. So play the conversation game. How's the project? Good. We're a little worried. We're 2 down right now and we can't seem to find candidates to fill those spots. That's a good answer. How are you going to find them? I have something to talk with you about. But if I just say, how's the project? You say pretty good. We're nowhere. We haven't moved an inch in cultivating a connection and building influence, gaining visibility with people and building a network. These people that don't do that, by the way, that are unwilling to put themselves out there and sort of against what our personality is. Then when we call somebody and say, David, who do you know that might be able to help me with this? David doesn't even remember who I am because I didn't even walk up to David to say hello at the last meeting. I didn't even genuinely ask him, what's new in your world, David, since the last time I saw you? So now I'm going to call you and ask you for the sale, the help, the contract.
Right. When you're passive in this dynamic, you are literally restricting your network.
Exactly. You're not expanding it, right?
Yeah, consciously you're restricting it.
I mean, how does everybody feel that's listening? And David, I'll ask you.
Yeah.
When you get LinkedIn invitations and you have no idea who they are.
Oh, they're horrible. LinkedIn has been destroyed. Originally it was meet the people you want to meet through the people you know, introduction.
Right.
And I used to say LinkedIn is not Facebook for business people.
Right.
It kind of is. It's become, I think, in my mind, a great platform for posting content. But in terms of interpersonal, 99% of the requests I get to connect every day, 7 to 10 a day, 99% of them pitch me their business as soon as I accept it.
Right.
And so they've trained us to dismiss them.
But not only that, okay, that's bad. You're right. They're out there. It's a transactional for them. But here's the thing. If you're going to issue me an invitation, and unless we really had this connected conversation, how about you say, it was great to meet you at.
Reference something.
Connect with you because write a message. That's small talk.
Buy me dinner before you try and get in my pants. Sorry, I don't mean to be crude, but that's what it feels like. It's like, oh, we just met. Hey, buy from me.
Right.
It's contrary to everything we know about building authentic relations. Well, it brings me to this. So timeless aspect, Debra, is being able to be bold enough to initiate conversations, authentic conversations that make a connection without going down the road. Now let's talk about the timely aspect.
Okay.
What do you think about because so much of us are out there on social media and other, what do you think about referencing something that you saw or read or a post as an entree to a conversation? Hey, I saw so-and-so, because we do tend to know more about each other. Our kids who would go to a camp or leadership thing once a year, they would see each other in the summer, go, oh my God, what have you been doing? You look great. Oh my God. Today they know everything because they keep in touch. What do you think about referencing social media as an entree to a conversation?
I think it's great. I do it all the time. The only time you need to be cautious, in my opinion, is if they're not visible on social media and you've stalked them. You Google stalked them. You found out that they have a dog and maybe a daughter because you Googled and Googled and Googled.
Then it gets creepy.
Very uncomfortable. If I met someone that I was meeting, they're a client for the first time, and they said to me, oh, I see you have, if we're not connected, it would make me feel like it's not authentic. If they had learned all that information before they ever met me. Does that make sense to you?
Well, but let me challenge you because everybody looks up everybody now. And it's part of what we do, and we see that. I mean, I ask audiences, I said, before you make a final hiring decision, do you search that person online, social media? 100% of the hands go up.
Do they?
Right? Because they have to. I mean, they got to make sure they're making a good decision. You think somebody presents themselves one way, you look at their social media and they're smoking weed, they're doing whatever. It gives them insight. So they look them up. How do you balance that without, even a social situation, without looking creepy? Right? Because before you meet somebody, people will look them up. We want to know what they look like so that they can make a connection. That's what's different today than it was 5 years ago.
It is different. And I don't know. I try to be really respectful of those kinds of boundaries until someone has sort of given me their permission. Just look you up and knows things, but I won't let you know that. I know that's
then maybe that's the answer, because I think people will. I think you can't ask people not to. But once again, as we're talking about authentic relationships, there is a discovery process.
Right, but I would rather meet you and have someone say to me, tell me about your family.
Right.
And say, oh, I saw on Facebook that you have this, this, and this. Because then I feel like we've jumped ahead way too far for me. And I would prefer you say, and that's the way I like to say it to people, is tell me about we all have families, they're all different kinds. Tell me about your family. And then learn from there. And then, connect socially. And because if I'm not connected with you on Facebook, then I've Google stalked you, and I don't know, it makes me uncomfortable. It makes me.
Well, let's take this to a different place, and maybe let's talk about uncomfortable for a second. And it's an uncomfortable subject, and people look at it different ways. But sort of in this era of Me Too,
right,
and all of that as well. Talk to me a little bit about caution. How do we, and I've heard ridiculous assertions from men. I mean, really ridiculous. Well, I can't have meetings with women anymore because I'm going to get accused of something else. And I'm like, it's beyond ridiculous. And I think women, conversely, are being excluded from certain situations.
Yeah.
Men who are being unreasonable. If you were going to talk to women about initiating these conversations within the realm of how do we initiate conversations without something misinterpreted? How do we initiate conversation without crossing boundaries? And then speak briefly to men about recognizing what hasn't changed and maybe what has.
David, I think what you bring up, and it's so great that a man would bring it up, I just want to tell you, because this is a conversation I've had with many women, and I don't recall the last time, except with my own husband, because we have daughters, that a man has said, about maybe it's because you have daughters and you're as concerned as I am that they have and leaders in their life and all that. And I just want to cite an anecdote, a recent anecdote. A woman came to me in my Rotary Club. I'm a Rotarian, and I'm past president, and there's 120 people there. And she came to me and she said, talk about awkward, Debra. I approached a man, she cited within the Rotary Club, and I said, I'd like to get to know you better, have a cup of coffee, and learn more about you. And he said, I'm married. And, it was like, if a man had said that to him, I'd like to get to know you better and have a cup of coffee, because that's what Rotarians are supposed to do. It's about
absolutely.
He never would have said to you, I'm married. Why would he tell you he's married?
Right.
And even if you're gay, which you're not, but he still wouldn't have said it to you. So, that's very off-putting, actually, and it's a struggle. It's actually one of the reasons why I use what keeps you busy outside of work, is because men don't feel threatened by it. They don't feel like you're being too personal, and then they like to talk about themselves. So that works out great.
So, but what would you say to women who might worry that their overture is misinterpreted? And God knows, for millennia, men are horrible at reading. I mean, a woman says hi and like, oh, she wants me. Come on.
Yeah.
Get over yourself.
Well, not all men think that. I do want to say, I think my husband, I think a lot of people don't feel that way, but I do think it's that men are being super cautious right now because they don't want to be put in a position where they're alone with a woman for a meal. I don't know if golfing would be up there or anything else, because they feel like they would be threatened by Me Too. And I'll tell you that my husband would never go into on a Saturday without me sitting out in the office for exactly that reason now. So it's really too bad. But I would say that people need to ask for what they want. And for me to pretend you were in a position of leadership at an organization, I work there.
Demonstrate that.
I would say, I would hope I wouldn't have to call you Mr. Avrin, so I'll go stick with David now.
That's fine, either way.
I really would like to learn more about how to climb up the ladder here at American Express. Would it be possible that you'd be willing to have lunch with me in the next couple of weeks? Could I email you and set up a time? Would that work for you? So I'm telling you what I'm asking for. I'm asking for help climbing up the ladder. Now, I have a son that works for American Express who just asked that very question, and he got a positive response. Why would it be any different for a woman his age to ask a leader to, and by the way, and I'm sure you probably teach things like this, but I asked for something specific. I didn't say, would you help me? Because what does that mean? That's just a broad brush.
I love the line. It's a specific.
I would like to have lunch with you.
Yes.
I would like to meet with you for half an hour at your call, at coffee, at your desk, whatever works for you in the next couple of weeks. Would that be okay? Issuing the invitation is absolutely critical to getting what you want, whether it's about the Me Too movement or anything else. If I met you or anybody else at a networking event, if I have an interest in continuing that conversation, this is what I say to you. I always issue the invitation. David, I'd like to, for us to connect, maybe learn more about your business. Would it be okay with you if I reached out to you within the next month to determine if there's a good time for you? Because what I'm not going to do is say, well, oh, great to meet you, nice to see you, and then call you in a month when I didn't issue the invitation. Don't you have that when you meet a realtor, insurance, whatever, and then they call you a month later? Do you remember I met you and I thought, you didn't issue an invitation to me? Because if you had, I would have told you I have an insurance person, I have a realtor, and now you're wasting both of our time and you were going to make me feel bad. Don't do that. And face-to-face, issue the invitation. So I would say in the Me Too movement,
there's clarification in that, right? There's clarification
there
in
is,
that, as opposed to, I'd like to know more about you. Would you like to have lunch? You can see how that might be misinterpreted.
But you're saying why? I would like help in learning how to climb the ladder here at American Express. So I could not that Sierra needs any help, but my daughter's doing the same thing. I would like to learn more, because if we hold ourselves back, women, because we are worried that men are thinking we're coming on to them or anything else, we'll never break out here. We will, I could say I've said to people at Rotary, we need more women on here. What can I do to make this different? How can we cultivate this? I want to be on this board. Say what you want, but
Great.
When we're vague, because sometimes not just women, but men, but I'll talk about women, are afraid to ask for what we want. So we come across as submissive. So we ask we're so afraid we're going to get a no that we say, would it be okay if you help me more with, learning how to be a project?
But it's okay if you're too busy.
Yeah. Right.
Right. That's the same thing.
Or saying, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
That's another part that I talk about in my book, assertive language. And it's not just meant for women, by the way. But of course, women, and being one, I can tell you that we constantly say, I'm sorry. We say things like this, David, I'll try to have that done by tomorrow. Why would I say I'll try? Why don't I say, David, I'll guarantee it'll be done by Friday. If I can get it done sooner, I will. So I'm telling you.
Or do you have time for this?
But
I understand if you don't. And stop giving me an out. I try and teach my daughters as well, that assertiveness. But I will tell you, I've been in one of those embarrassing situations. And I feel like an idiot. So I get done with a presentation. And you and I both know that we'll get people gathered around and they're very complimentary and they want to talk or they have a question or they want to give a card. And I got done with the presentation and a young woman came up. She's like, that was unbelievable. Like, you were so funny and everything else.
Right.
Can I get your number? And I said, I am really flattered. Thank you. But and she goes, oh, no. I have a gig or whatever. And I felt like an absolute
Why did you do that? I'm curious.
Idiot.
Was this, why would you think, I'm just curious.
Because she was complimenting me on, this is, I can't believe I'm relating this on the
I'm glad you are.
But she said nothing about work or anything. So once again, we talk about clarity of language. So she said, and this was probably a year and a half ago, she just complimented me personally. You were so funny. You're so, it was so great. Can I have your number? Well, normally they would say, do you have a business card? Do you have a And so a woman asked me and so I'm, of course, because I'm a very loyal, a good man, and I find ways to sort of say, I'm like, thank you, I'm very flattered, but I'm married. And then she goes like, oh no, I have a gig or whatever. And I said to her, I said, I am really embarrassed. I said, what an idiot. And she goes, no. I would like, but that's why, once again.
The man, I bet you wouldn't have responded that way, right? If it had been a man.
Well, no. It depends on how flamboyant the individual was. But but that's what I'm saying is nothing business was discussed at the time. So what I'm talking about is a remedy for that, as you talked about, is clarity. Like, you were so funny. I've got an association I'm a member of, and I think you would be a really good fit. Can I get your number?
Well, I wish she had been more clear.
I wish she had.
She was nervous.
I'm the idiot.
He was probably nervous, David, because when somebody's on stage, especially someone like
they're bigger than life. I get that.
Exactly, and I'm guessing she was nervous. I'm going to tell you, as recently as this year, and you can see me and what I look like, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not hot, and this is what this past year. At the end of a presentation, Wealth Management invited all their clients. It was in Charlotte, whatever, and they were struck up a conversation with me, and something in me told me he was flirting with me. He was my age or older. I felt like I was being flirted with, but I can't call. It's like, I can't call you on flirting with me. I'm not sure. So this is what I said. He said, blah, blah, blah. My husband would think that was funny, blah, 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 blah. So
right. There you go.
You know what he said to me? He was nasty. He said, why did you just mention you have a husband? Did you think I was flirting with you? Well,
yeah.
The woman only has two options. She can say, yes, I did. And then what do you think he's going to say? Why would I flirt with you? You're ugly, you're fat, whatever.
Right. That's right. He was trying to get off
the hook. He said, I said, no, I didn't think you were flirting with me. He said, I don't like the way you just weave that in. And I thought, well, that's your problem, buddy. But here's the point. Is there something with situations are no win. This is what's great about how you handled it. You apologized. You took accountability. You didn't just
quickly
self-talk. You told her, I blew it, man. I made a mistake. I'm sorry that I did.
I'm embarrassed. And I kind of laughed. She's like, oh, no. I said, I apologize. But I think she realized, I think she probably was. Listen, I don't want to talk more about me, but we know we know that these kinds of social situations in the office, at a conference, they happen all the time. And so people do have to balance sort of the effective, that when you talk about the fine art of small talk, which I think that's the key word, is the art. There's an art to this, of being prepared, of recognizing, making the other person feel comfortable. So you're having legitimate conversations with clarity. I think that they're great tools for everyone.
And then you ask for what you want, because that is a big part of the programs I offer to, certain segment. Issue the invitation. I'd like to tell you more about my insurance program. I think your company would benefit from it. Would it be okay if I reached out to you? And then you get to say, I'd rather you didn't. This is a really busy time of year.
Yeah.
We're done, right?
Right.
But if you don't ask for business,
tell you more about this, can I buy you a cup of coffee?
Right. If you don't ask for people's business, you're not going to get it either. And I think, David, you and I know that better than anybody. You cannot hope the phone will ring or that, emails will come through. You have to ask for what you want. Absolutely.
Hey, listen, I could talk forever. And the good news is, because we are friends, we can talk whenever we want. But for the purposes of this, if people want to get a hold of you, bring you in for a presentation, learn more about your books and your consulting and the consulting work that you do, the training that you do, the speaking you do, how do they get in touch with you?
The best way is either via my website at debrafine.com, DebraFine.com. And you can hit contact Debra, or, David Avrin's, I couldn't agree with him more on this topic. I did not do the research in advance, but it just sticks in my craw. The people that have to fill out forms to reach, so just.
No contact forms.
My homepage, it has my phone number. I'm not going to recite it now. It's not necessary. It has my phone number, my business phone number, of course, and it has my email, Debra@DebraFine.com. So either click on one or the other, phone me. I like phone calls. When somebody emails me about a piece of business, I call them. How about you, David?
Absolutely. If I could have a cranial implant where people could directly access my cerebral cortex, I would. I am that.
I'm really glad to be on here. I'm honored that you asked, and I wish you safe travels. I hope I see you in Vegas for a minute at our mutual.
You will. We're going to be in a month. Of course, these podcasts live on. For those of you listening, for those of you listening, great skills, great opportunity to talk to Debra Fine. Think about your communication. Be strategic. Don't be dismissive of what this means. Really important. Hey, the Very Visible Business Podcast is sponsored by the Customer Experience Advantage Morning Huddle. Your next $1 million idea will likely come from your own team, but only if you create the space for challenging, powerful internal conversations with your team. You can learn how membership in the Customer Experience Advantage can give you the content and the questions and the tools to facilitate a weekly morning huddle with your team. You can learn more and you can watch sample videos by visiting thecxadvantage.com. Be sure to click to like this podcast. Hit the subscribe button, no matter where you're listening, on Stitcher and Megaphone and Spotify and Apple iTunes, and of course C-Suite Radio. The video version is on my website and also on YouTube as well. And be sure to pick up a copy of my brand new book, Why Customers Leave and How to Win Them Back, right after you pick up a copy of The Fine Art of Small Talk, probably in its there you go, in its 47th printing. How many times has this thing gone back?
This came out in 2002, and it's still a big bestseller for Hachette.
Almost 20 years in, and
we're doing great.
Everything else, and then pick up my book, Why Customers Leave. Forbes just listed this as one of the 7 business books that entrepreneurs need to read. It's on Kindle. It's on audiobook with my voice and everything else. Check out some of the other podcasts that you see from others as well. And we appreciate your time. Have a great day.
Thanks, David. Thank you.
For past and future episodes, be sure to subscribe at theveryvisiblebusiness.com. You can also learn more about David Avrin's keynote speaking and consulting at visibilityinternational.com. Connect with us on social media and check out David Avrin's latest book, Visibility Marketing, at Amazon.com. This has been the Very Visible Business Podcast with David Avrin.